You need to put something on that side. So you want to do the CQR intros? Yep.
Hi, good morning. And John, just wanted to make sure that the screen is visible for the count question resolution here.
No, you're not sharing. All as I see is the general welcome screen. Now we see your script.
You need to go on sharing and then choose the, yep.
All right.
Good to go.
Good morning. Sorry about that. Good morning and welcome to the Census Count Question Resolution Workshop hosted by the Maryland Department of Planning. My name is Alfred Sundara. I'm the manager of the Projections and State Data Center at the Maryland Department of Planning. We have about 50 people registered in this event today, and our main focus on this workshop is to help counties, cities, and municipalities to be familiar with and understand the process of challenging the 2020 census counts. We have several folks from the Maryland State Data Center and a guest speaker from the Census Bureau presenting on census count question resolution. So before we get started, we have a poll question. We'll give it a couple of minutes to get the responses.
If you're unable to register a response, if you're unable to click, you'll need to leave full screen mode.
All right, John, would you please share the poll results? I cannot see them here.
Krishna can see it. It's audience view. Well, I'll read them for you. So coming out on the top is county government at 44%. Municipal government is our next largest group at 37%. State government at 15%, and all other at 4%.
Thank you, John. That's a good mix of local governments that have an interest in what's going on with the census count question resolution process. Okay, so we are recording this webinar and we will post it next week or whenever it's available on the State Data Center website under the annual meetings and workshop section. And we will also post today's PowerPoint as PDFs on the website. You should be able to download them. And also we will post the recording of today's presentation as well. We will send a link to all the participants when it's available on our website. I will also note that we have posted the agenda as a handout item on the GoToWebinar control panel. And here is a screenshot of the Maryland State Data Center homepage. We are going to post the webinar under annual meetings and workshops. This text is going to be edited to include workshops, and from that link, you should be able to access the webinar and other materials associated with this webinar. So before we begin, I would like to orient you to some of the GoToWebinar features that you will be using today. If you have a question for any of our speakers, you do not have to wait till the end. You can submit a question anytime using the questions dialog box here. This questions dialog box is on the right side of the control panel under questions here. And we will have a question and answer session after each presentation. So today's speakers or presentations include, we have Matthew Freites. He's the Chief of Count Question Resolution from the Census Bureau. He will be presenting on how to file a CQR and the timeline of the CQR. CQR stands for Census Count Question Resolution. And we have Secretary McCord. He is going to deliver us our opening remarks. We have Krishna Akundi. He is a socioeconomic planner here at the State Data Center. He will give an overview of what data is available and how that could be helpful in doing a CQR challenge. We also have Tina James. She is our GIS planner. She will make you familiar with what type of geographies and maps that are available to assist you with your CQR challenge. And again, finally, I will conclude the presentation with what the State Data Center can do to help your case when you're considering a CQR challenge. So with that said, I will turn over to Secretary McCord for an opening remarks and a statement.
Can you see me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Please turn on your webcam.
There you go. Thank you very much. Sorry about the technical difficulties. My greeting is also a very big thank you. The local efforts throughout the entire census process, they were key to making sure we ended up in that top 10. 9th in the nation didn't come about because of all the efforts of simply the State Data Center. All those efforts combined with local efforts made sure that we came in 9th in the nation in self-response. So now we're going to try to make sure that we can provide resources to help you determine any missing addresses. We're proud of all of that work that we did in the LUCA program, all of the local jurisdictions partnering with us to make sure we had the local update of census addresses as complete as possible. That is a process that we use in Maryland that is among the best in the nation, and I think everyone in local government is to be commended for that also. We are making sure that all of our partners, every local government partner, receives as much help as they can from the State Data Center in their process of this complete count review. So I am happy to kick this off, but I wouldn't dare say that our success as a state did not depend on the local governments, all the nonprofits, everyone that helped out in this process. But local government is where the rubber meets the road for making sure that your citizens are counted. So I want to make sure that you understand we're going to put all of our resources together, everything that you might need to make sure that you can make sure that everyone is counted. Making sure everyone is counted begins with making sure you have all the addresses. If there are 10 more addresses added because Oak Street now has a South Oak Street, then everybody there we made sure is going to be counted. So everybody that participates at the local government level, you can rest assured that the State Data Center will be helping you to get the best presentation together to meet the deadlines that the Census Bureau has for this program. So thank you very much. And I commend the State Data Center for their outreach. This is not the first time we've done this. We'll continue to do this and try to make sure that everyone in Maryland is counted. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary McCord. Now we have a poll question before we roll into Matthew Freites' presentation. The poll question should show up on your screen in any moment. So we'll wait for a couple of moments for people to respond before we inform the results. All right, I think we have the results for the poll. Like about 30% of the participants are aware of the CQR, and about 70% do not have an awareness of what CQR is. We will try to make you familiar with what CQR is after this couple of presentations we have. With that said, we will have Matthew Freites present on the Census Bureau's part of the census count question resolution.
Okay. Can everybody hear me, and can everybody see what I'm presenting?
It's all working.
Excellent, excellent. So first of all, a big thank you for having me here. As already stated, my name is Matt Freites. I'm the branch chief of the Count Question Resolution branch in the Decennial Census Management Division here at the Census Bureau. I just want to set a few expectations for this presentation. This right now is a 30,000-foot view of what CQR is. It's really not intended to be any type of a training, and it is also not intended to get into the nitty-gritty of maybe some issues that you are seeing in your particular jurisdictions. Those questions are better left for our resources and call center that we have that I'm going to allude to a little bit later. And so I will not be able to answer definitively whether something can be fixed or will be in scope for CQR. It is all very dependent, case dependent on what is submitted as a part of the case. That being said, what is CQR? So seeing that 70% of the folks on this call are not familiar with CQR, a little bit of history. The first iteration of CQR was in Census 1990. It has evolved since then, and since Census 2000, it is currently what you are going to be hearing about today. And it is a geographic operation that allows state and local governments to request a review of their housing inventory. And I make that distinction because this is a geographic operation. We are not looking at the counts. What we are looking at is the placement of housing units within a particular, particular census block that is a part of the case that has been submitted. And the goal is really to improve the base of future post-2020 census population estimates. The count corrections, when we do give them, will be issued when necessary to either the tribal chairperson or highest elected official of any of the affected governmental units, and those results will be uploaded to the CQR website as errata. Those corrections will be reflected in the future population estimates program, like I mentioned, and it is one of many factors. So CQR is not the only factor that goes into population estimates. It is one of, I believe, 4 or 5. I cannot speak to those in depth. It is not something that I work on, but I do know that it is a small portion of what goes into the population estimates that take place between now and the next census in 2030. CQR is, some things that CQR does not do. I've heard mentioned that, if there was, let's say, new housing units that came in since then, we want to make sure those people are counted. So what CQR does not do is we do not revise the apportionment data that's been sent to the president. We do not revise redistricting, and we don't revise the demographic and housing characteristics file. So what we are looking at is housing units as of April 1st of 2020. And so if it has come on since then, it is not in scope for CQR. We're also not allowed to collect any new data. There is no additional field work that takes place. There is no re-enumeration effort, and it is not the same as a special census, which is really the closest thing that we, the Census Bureau, provide in terms of a re-enumeration effort, and that is at the cost of the government requesting that from the Census Bureau. One of the hot topics this decade is disclosure avoidance and differential privacy. And CQR is not a mechanism to be able to address those data concerns that you may feel are due to differential privacy. That's not to say that we won't be able to look at it. If you see a wonky number in your census data products and you feel it is incorrect, we will certainly look at it as long as all of the correct materials have been provided to us. But however, my point being is that if we go in and see that it is differential privacy only that is making this number look different, we cannot fix that. That is just part of the overall data privacy and differential privacy methods that we have applied this census. And again, that is outside of my jurisdiction to speak on. But if there are questions about how that was done or more information is needed, I can certainly, after this presentation offline, provide that to the moderators. So this next slide is a visual representation of what I call the geographic scenarios in what are the two case types for CQR. So we have two cases, a living quarter count case and a boundary case. And within a living quarter count case, what we're looking at are two things. We're looking at geocoding corrections or coverage corrections. And a geocoding correction, of course, is looking at the geographic location of housing units within a census tabulation block. And here you see visually on the left-hand side of that visual, we have housing units that have been included in a block, and they should have been included in another block that is adjacent. For coverage issues, we are looking for post-processing errors after data collection that may be erroneously left off addresses from the master address file. And let's say that during Update Enumerate or Remote Alaska, for instance, they had physical ad sheets and an address was put in through that, and it did not make the master address file in post-processing. That would be something that'd be a coverage error that we would be able to fix. And this is on data that we have already collected. I mentioned earlier that we are not legally able to collect any new data, and this falls in line with that. So if, let's say, a field worker went to a census block, saw an address, listed it in the wrong place, that is not something that CQR can fix. It is past data collection. It is only if we erroneously left it off because of a processing error. And these are, again, as of April 1st of 2020, and that is official census day. A boundary case is looking at the legal boundary, but as of January 1st of 2020. So any boundaries that have been changed since then or annexations that have taken place post January 1st of 2020 are out of scope for CQR. And this is just to visually give you an idea, of what we are doing. Now, one of the reasons why the scope is so limited for CQR is because we have a plethora of quality assurance processes that took place throughout the entirety of the census life cycle, from listing and address canvassing all the way through to non-response follow-up. And those are what we are leaning on because we feel that they have been robust enough and fleshed out enough that we have provided the most accurate census that we can provide. One of the biggest topics this year outside of differential privacy, and I think that it always is, are group quarters. When we were going through the planning of this and getting the approval, we had to get Office of Management and Budget approval prior to being able to liaise with the governments. We had to go through the process of a 60-day public comment period, and that was in October of 2020. Well, during that comment period, we received feedback on two things. First of all, the date of when CQR was going to start. Initially, before COVID-19 and before the pandemic, this was supposed to start on June 1st of 2021 because the normal census timeline would follow with the apportionment data being sent to the president by December 31st of that census year, and then redistricting happening, I believe, by March 31st of the next year. And those dates did not come to fruition due to multiple delays that took place as a part of the COVID-19 pandemic. We, as planning for CQR, decided to move our start date back to accommodate for these changes, and that was initially supposed to happen October 1st of 2021. As we were going through this, the comments that we received about the scope of CQR and how limited it was, we had to push the start date back even further to what was January 3rd of 2022 in order to allow for the governments and the data users, to look at their 2020 census data products, because the redistricting data came out on a flow basis in September of 2021. And so if we were going to start on October 1st, it was not going to allow for a lot of time or a lot of digestion for that. I mentioned GQs, and one of the other pieces of feedback that we received was on the limited scope. And we were trying to accommodate what would have been using administrative records supplied by the government to look at the population counts of a group quarter. And this differs from what CQR is able to provide. CQR is looking at the housing unit placement and inventory, not the count within those housing units. However, this was going to allow for a more robust review of the population of a group quarter. As we were doing this review, legally speaking, we are not allowed to collect any new data. And legally speaking, the census must end, or data collection must end, when the apportionment results are delivered to Congress and the president. And that happens prior to the timeline for CQR. And this is why CQR itself was not able to accommodate this robust scope. However, it didn't preclude the Census Bureau from being able to do so. And right now there is a proposed program called the Post-Census Group Quarters Review Program. And it is something that I do not work on. and can't really get into the details on because I'd be speaking out of turn. However, right now, the 30-day public comment period for the Federal Register notice is live and available for public comment, and I have provided that link later. That is really the one place to get the most official information on this operation and what it is going to provide, at least in terms of the details that we have now. It is proposed and it is likely to be approved, but right now it is only in proposed status, and that's why we can't, or I can't speak to it any further because I don't work on it and also because of its status. But that is a good place to go for information because I know that group quarters are a very, they're a concern for governments all across the nation. So that being said, what does a day in the life, I guess, of a CQR case look like? Well, first, the tribal, state, and local governments will review their published 2020 census results, as I mentioned. And if they look at it and suspect there is some type of an error, either with their count, their housing counts by block, or their boundaries, they may file a CQR case with us. My staff will receive those cases, or is receiving those cases now. We're reviewing the case materials that have been submitted for correctness and completeness, and those guidelines, I guess, or requirements for documentation and evidence are provided in the resources that I will talk to later, but one of them is the participant guide, which I think may be a handout for this particular webinar. And we're going to look for those in terms of the scope that we talked about. And we're going to determine whether they are in or out of scope based off of what I talked about earlier with those cases and the geographic scenarios within. The in-scope cases will be sent to our geographic subject matter experts, and they will research for a resolution based off of two things. Obviously, the enumeration and processing records that we have at the Census Bureau as part of the 2020 census, and any of the evidence that was provided by the governmental unit. Research may or may not find these processing errors. However, no matter what the outcome of the case is, you will hear from us one way or the other, whether that is providing new certified counts or letting you know that our research determined that no change will be made. If none of these processing errors are found, there will be no updates and the case will be closed. If they are found, they will be addressed within our systems and records. And once resolved, we will provide certified counts to any government that was impacted by this case when applicable. So for instance, if we had to change a geocode of some housing units and that made the count different for that particular jurisdiction as part of the case, we will provide a new certified count. We will not be going back and changing the 2020 census results, but we will be providing that new certified count, which can be used for funding when applicable. And we try to make that as overt as possible in terms of this is something that you can use for future funding. How you use that is up to you. We do not determine that or cannot help you decide how you are going to do that, but it is something that can come out of a CQR case. We will be providing dispositions for each of these cases to the appropriate highest elected official of all the impacted tribal, state, and local governments. I want to say as well, a question that I get just about every time that I speak to an SDC crowd is whether the SDCs can act as a liaison for the highest elected official of a CQR case. And the answer to that question is yes. What we need is an official designation from the highest elected official, usually on letterhead or via email, that states that so-and-so or this individual is the official spokesperson for this case, because the details of the cases are on a need-to-know basis for the government that is, questioning the census or questioning our housing unit inventory, so to speak. And we just want to make sure that that is on record so that we can communicate with the proper people and make sure that only the people that are supposed to be seeing this information are getting this information. And once all of this is done and a case is closed, those results will be posted as errata to our 2020 website over time as we go through this operation. And so that is basically I don't want to say day-to-day workflow, because the cases can take up to 90 days and we try to hold ourselves to that, but we will tell you if research may take a longer time. We're going to need additional time. My point being in saying all of this is that the Census Bureau communicates as frequently as necessary. So if we need more documentation from you, if we need to clarify what you're asking, we are going to contact you and make sure that we have everything that we need from you to be able to provide the best possible research and therefore the most accurate resolution to what you are asking of us. So the timeline for CQR, right now we are accepting cases, and that's really the most important thing to know. All these dates that are prior to with the check marks are in the past at this point, but you can kind of see how we came to January of 2022. Right now we are accepting cases from eligible governments. The eligibility of a government is listed in our participant guide and other places as well, and that is on our website, and we'll get to that in the next slide. The other dates to keep in mind, June 30th is our deadline from which we will be accepting new cases, and we must complete all research and dispositions by September 30th of 2023. Both of these dates are not subject to change. They will be the same. And so make sure that if you are working with other partners, the SDC or any type of data users, that you keep these dates in mind, because June 30th will be the last day that we accept new cases, and we need to finish everything by September 30th of 2023. So from January of 2022 to September of 2023, we're providing roughly an 18-month window for governments to be able to look at their census data products, work with the Census Bureau, and if they feel that CQR is right for them, participate in CQR and try to get a resolution. So where are we? I mean, most importantly, we are at a place where we're accepting cases right now. Our CQR call center help desk is live and has been live since December 1st. I say this a lot. This is probably the best place that anybody can go for questions about CQR. The way that we have set it up is on our website, we have public FAQs, which are listed here. Our tiered phone, we have a tiered call center, which basically allows for escalation methods. So from the lowest tier, which has those FAQs available and is able to answer questions based off of those FAQs, to questions about something a little bit more in-depth about the kind of case, maybe a particular jurisdiction, all the way up to scope questions. We have avenues to be able to escalate those to where we need to. And we're not only employing headquarters staff like myself, we're employing our National Processing Center staff, as well as our regional offices. We have regional geographers out there who are more familiar with the landscape and can be able to help and answer questions about particulars that may be seen in a particular town or jurisdiction. And that's why I say at the beginning, I'm not an expert on CQR of everything. I'm certainly not a geography expert of everything that happens in the country. And the reason we have set this up is because we want to make sure that we can provide the best information possible spread out through all of the different subject matter experts that we have employed at the Census Bureau. The website is another great resource that you should become very familiar with. So not only the communication avenues of the call center, but our website as well, because the website is the one-stop shop for all of the documentation. Public FAQs, the participant guides, the flyer, which was sent out initially on December 1st, we did, or December 15th, we did an email communication sort of announcing the program, saying this is CQR, this is what it does, and we also provided this flyer. This was not proprietary to the governments that we had on file. This is something that's public and on the website. It's a one-pager front and back that gives a little bit more detailed information that's not quite as in-depth as the participant guide, which is, I think, close to 200 pages long, but it does give a little bit more in-depth information if you want to see something in a general sense and decide where you want to go within our documentation from there. And all of our letters are also posted, and these are the letters that we send out for various reasons, such as your case is in scope and we are researching it, to there were no changes made, here are the changes that we made, those types of things. Those are all out there so that folks can see the kind of letters and communications that we are sending based off of the different scenarios that could take place within a CQR case. It is a short presentation. I said it was the 30,000-foot view, and I'll certainly open up myself to questions after this slide, but a couple of things here on this slide. I mentioned the CQR website, and this is linked here, and if I need to provide that link later to the moderators, I can do so. Bookmark this page, go to it, become very familiar with it. It's where we have housed everything, and we have attempted to make it sort of a one-stop shop for any type of documentation that folks might need to either learn about CQR or get information on what they need to do to participate. I talked about the post-census group quarters review and that Federal Register notice. I have linked that here because, again, that is the best place to go for the current information on this proposed operation. And that last link, what to consider if you see an unexpected census result. I think most think that CQR is the one-stop place where they can go if they have a question about their count. And in reality, the Census Bureau is providing multiple avenues or multiple mechanisms for governments to be able to, I guess, ask about their count. CQR is one of those. We have provided this link here because this is basically summarizing all of the other mechanisms that are available, from count question resolution to the special census program to the population estimates program. We want to make sure that at least the information is available for any of the potential avenues for recourse that governments might have, because CQR is very limited. We are only looking at the geographic location of living quarters. We're not looking at the population itself. And so a lot of times that is an unsatisfactory result for governments because they are more concerned about how many people were in, let's say, a dormitory as opposed to where that dormitory is located. And also here we have the email address. The email address is for our submissions inbox, which is where all of our cases are go. We monitor that box daily, and we make sure that if there are any questions about a case or you want to file a case, this is where it would go. We make sure that it gets to the right people, again, in this network of individuals and subject matter experts that we have to be able to answer any questions that are asked. And that 888 phone number is to that call center that I mentioned. It is a great resource. Again, we have set it up so that it can be the place to answer questions. So that is all that I have for right now, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and I will open myself up to questions.
Hello, Matt. I'm going to read out the questions. We've got a few of them. First one is, what are the deadlines for us to submit the changes?
Like I had in the key dates. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And this question is from the city of Rockville. The question is, what are the deadlines for us to submit the changes?
Okay, and that was on the key dates slide. So June 30th of 2023 is when we stop accepting new cases from governments, and we need to complete our research by September 30th of 2023. So for instance, if we get a case on June 30th of 2023, that research and resolution must be completed by September of 2023.
The second question is, what's an SDC? You can take that, you can answer that question, or you can have us answer it, whichever is you prefer.
I certainly know what the acronym stands for, and that's the State Data Center. As far as what you all do or what the state data centers do for not only the state of Maryland, but nationally, I can't speak to the full scope of what you all do, but I do know that it stands for State Data Center.
Yeah, so following up on Matt's response, the State Data Center is a census program that was started in the 1970s. And what the state data centers do is there are 50 state data centers in each of the 50 states. And each state data center provides census data and census programs more easily and directly to the public. And that's generally what the state data center program is, but I'll let Al answer anything, respond more if he has any more detail.
Yeah, that pretty much covers it, Krishna. We are here to provide the census data that is shared with us for the state of Maryland and its jurisdictions, and provide assistance for any analysis or policy decisions that you might make using data. We will make whatever data is available to you easily.
All right, back to you, Matt. The next question, can you clarify, confirm that this is a review of the placement of housing units and not housing unit counts?
It's not just the placement, it is the housing unit. If you're talking about the count of housing units and you're looking at there's supposed to be 36 living quarters in a block, but what we are not looking at is the population that is associated with those the housing units. So if you're concerned that maybe some of these living quarters should be moved to this block and not be in the other, that's something that we can look at. But if you're concerned about, and I use dormitories as a good example because it happens a lot of, we have 1,000 people in this dorm, we should have 1,500. That is not in scope for CQR.
Next question, this comes from, I believe, Prince George's County. What is GUPS, G-U-P-S? I believe you had that on your slide
So
somewhere.
GUPS is, I might have, but it's in the, we have that in the documentation. We have two participant guides. We have a participant guide for if you're going to use GUPS. I cannot remember the acronym off my head. We in the government, as you know, we have so many acronyms, but it's essentially the outward facing software via website for governments to be able to submit some of their some of their materials and evidence that they feel is necessary for their particular case. It's not applicable for every government. It's not applicable for every case. It's on a case-by-case basis whether that is appropriate. And we do have a participant guide for GUPS users only that goes into details, including screenshots and exact instructions on how to participate with it. If you still have questions, though, the call center that I mentioned is set up to be able to answer questions about GUPS and SWIM. Those are the two outward-facing, web applications that we have. And again, the FAQs have questions and answers there, but we do have folks who are able to talk more specifically about that particular software if you have detailed questions about it.
Matt, a follow-up on the GUPS point. So if someone wants to submit a challenge, what exactly is that process? The physical process of submitting the challenge itself, the packet.
So it depends on how you want to do it. Each government is different. Up to this point, we've received electronic submission via email. We have received paper submissions via mail, where it's sent to our National Processing Center. In the participant guides that I mentioned, no matter how it is that you need to submit a case, it is laid out there. So it's, again, dependent on your automation. It's dependent on your needs, what you're providing to us. There is no one general answer for every single government, because we have received cases up until this point, and I can tell you that every single one of them has been different. But if their email addresses were provided, and that's one way to do it, even if the initial email is, I'd like to submit a case, can I get some help on how to do that? We make sure that those questions are answered so that the right materials are sent in, and you know what is asked of you. We'll send you to either one of the FAQs or make sure that we have information specific to what you're asking. And again, if we have questions based off of what has been submitted, we will contact those governments to make sure that we have what we need from them and make sure that we are clarifying what has been provided to us and what we need from them. So it's a lot of communication back and forth, and the answer of it depends isn't a great one, but it does, because like I said, we've received cases and all of them have been different in what has been submitted and what we've needed to contact for and so forth. So it is not a straightforward process in the sense that every single government or every single level can participate in the same exact way.
Thank you. The next question, the person is asking, I see that group quarter facilities are available on a block group basis for the census count listing file viewer, but do not see this data set elsewhere. Where can we find on the 2020 census group quarters units? I've checked H1 and P5 tables and do not see this data published there either. As a follow-on, is the data aggregated at the tract level, and if so, where can that be found?
I'm not a data products expert, so I would have to find the information of folks who could get that information to you. Now, I will tell you that finding your census data, we do have that built into the call center as well, because there are folks who have questions like this, who need to know where to go to find their data products. And so I would say to call that call center and ask these questions here, because most likely they can be answered there. Again, I'd be speaking out of turn talking about every single data product, because my specialty is executing this operation. The data products are done by another large group of folks who not only do it for this particular purpose, but all the other data products that are coming out. So if I need to provide a name for that, I can, but I would say in this instance, if you are looking for the data products to be able to participate in CQR, I would go toward our call center first, because I believe that's probably going to be able to answer your question.
Thank you, Matt. Following up on Matt's response, with respect to your question about group quarters and other data sets, this is something that the State Data Center can provide. And as we go into the next presentations, we will address at that point. Next question is, does the Census Bureau intend to revisit population counts at any point?
If you're talking about a re-enumeration effort, the answer to that is no. The census is over, and we cannot collect new data, as I mentioned, because as of the apportionment data being sent to the president, everything that happens with the Census Bureau is a future endeavor that will update not only the base for the population estimates in years between now and the next census, but continue to update the address list and the frame between now and the 2030 census. So, I can't speak to anything that happened in terms of I know that there were a lot of endeavors that took place because of the pandemic and trying to accommodate for things like students moving out of dormitories and then having to move back and all of that. But will we be revisiting other areas to basically re-enumerate an area? The answer to that is no.
Next question, going back to what you have on your slide. The person is asking Census Bureau to provide results. There is something on one of your slides which says Census Bureau to provide results to impacted GUS. So what is GUS?
That was at the beginning. It's a governmental unit, and that's what we call any of the state and local governments or tribal governments that are eligible to participate in CQR. And all of those levels of government are listed out in our participant guide as well. And so what happens is if there is a government that wants to participate, but they are not an eligible government based off of the guidelines that we have set out, we do encourage them to work with the next most applicable level of government. Most of the time, it's the county level or something like that. But that's what GU stands for, governmental unit.
So next question. Sticking with the topic of SDC, will the local government need to coordinate with the SDC to submit changes at the block level? Or will the local entities need to submit those changes using the aforementioned census website?
That is completely up to the government. The SDCs are certainly there to provide help, and we have had an instance where an SDC has been designated the liaison for a particular set of towns or governments in a particular state. But that's completely up to the state. It's completely up to the government. How you want to participate is up to you. We don't dictate that. We just make it available for if you want another entity to participate on your behalf, that you can do that by letting us know. Or if a government wants to take on the census or the CQR process by themselves, they can certainly do that as well.
This seems to be the last question. At this point, we're not aware of any issues with our housing unit counts or geographic assignment placement. It sounds like we would need to review our block data, block by block, and compare it to local data to determine whether there are any errors. Is that correct?
As long as we're talking about, we feel that housing units should have been here as of April 1st, then yes. But if you're talking about going by block and looking at population numbers, the answer is no. We are only looking at where housing units and living quarters were as of April 1st and making changes if there was a post-processing error that either misgeocoded something or erroneously left it off of the census in a coverage issue, or there's a boundary that needs to be looked at as of January 1st of 2020. But if you feel that your housing units are in the right place, that's why I provided that what to consider if you see an unexpected census result that aggregates and sort of generalizes all of the other mechanisms that may be applicable for a government. I'm certainly not an expert in them and can't say whether one would work for you or not, but that's why they're there. And that's the special census, this post-census group quarters review, and the population estimates program, which are all mechanisms to possibly address what is considered an unexpected result. But again, all of them share the commonality with CQR that they do not go back and change the 2020 census numbers.
Thank you, Matt. That was Matt Freight from the Census Bureau, and I'm going to turn it back to Al Sundar.
Thank you, Krishna, and thank you, Matt. I want to clarify a couple of questions that came up after Matt's presentation. One of those things, like with regards to the state data center helping with CQR challenges, we are here to help. We would like to work with you and help you if you are not comfortable filing a CQR challenge to the Census Bureau. We will provide assistance, or we will file it on your behalf if you sign off on the required letter authorizing the SDC to act on your behalf. And the other question I would like to answer in a way is, with regards to the population counts, as Matt mentioned, there would not be any changes to the enumeration. But what is going to happen is after a CQR has been successfully completed, the Census Bureau will adjust the census base population, which is going to be used for the census population estimates program. The Census Bureau releases pop estimates data every year for the jurisdictions, all 23 counties and the city of Baltimore, and all 157 municipalities, incorporated places in Maryland. So if they revise this population and use this as a base, which they release the data every year, it would be beneficial for the local governments, because like if the population numbers are revised up in a way, the numbers are tied to the funding that the local governments receive. So that's good in a way to get it corrected, but again, like it does not impact the overall reapportionment of the seats, but at least in the local way, it will help you with the funding. With that said, we will, I can finally thank you, Matt, for your presentation. It was really helpful and informative. We will move on to our next part of the presentation, which will be the presentation on the state data center, what we are going to do or what we can provide assistance with. So before we start this presentation, we have a poll question which we would like to ask the audience. John, can you please bring up the poll question, please? We'll give it a moment for folks to answer the question, and then we will share the results shortly. All right, I'm going to read out the results for this poll question. We have about 33% or 1/3 of the folks that are familiar with this, and 67% are not. And
so the question obviously is, has your county or municipality discovered a discrepancy with the census data? And as Al mentioned, 1/3 of you responded that you did find a discrepancy, while the majority of you did not.
so thank you, Krishna. And we will roll on to the next presentation. We will start off with Krishna Kundi. He's going to go over what data resources we have at the State Data Center that could be helpful for your CQR challenges.
So what information is currently accessible from the Census Bureau regarding the 2020 decennial census? And as you can see on this slide, based on the redistricting data file, this is what is currently available from the U.S. Census Bureau, and it is also accessible on the State Data Center website. Later this year, the 2020 decennial census program will also release the demographic and housing characteristics reports. And for those of you who are familiar with the 2010 census and the 2000 census, this demographic and housing characteristics is also known as SF1, was previously known as SF1 and SF2. as many of you may also know, the Census Bureau, through another program, the American Community Survey, has released its 2016-2020 estimates, and these are currently available from the State Data Center as well. Next slide, please. So what data is available from Maryland State Data Center? Right now, with respect to the redistricting data that has been released, we have data available for blocks, block groups, tracts, municipalities, and counties, and these are available at the link shown below. In addition to that, we have Excel files with population and housing unit summaries available at the State Data Center, and these are available at the link shown below. And finally, you can explore the redistricting data summaries, also known as PL 94-171. So in other words, the Public Law 94-171 data is available also at our website, and this is available at the link below. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the State Data Center website, and as you will note, at the very top, we have the link to the State Data Center. You'll have this presentation available and are able to access any of the links here. What you will notice on this page is that the top content of the header line shows you 7 tabs, and each tab will take you to different aspects or different sets of data that are available on the State Data Center website, on the Maryland State Data Center website. What we are going to focus on here is the Census Data Tab. So the Census Data Tab shows what exactly the new data that is accessible from our site. And the 2020 resources, as you can see, include the Maryland redistricting data, the PL 94-171 data, the redistricting data that I mentioned, as well as a summary that we've provided of population and housing units for the state and for its 24 jurisdictions, 23 jurisdictions in Baltimore City, as well as for the municipalities. We also have access from here for census geographies and the comparison between 2010 and 2020 census population by jurisdiction. This slide actually looks at the Census 2020 PL 94-171 data that we have available. What these links actually show you is they will, if you click on them, they will provide the raw data. So basically, if you want to compare data that you have with what is available with what the census has, you can do that here. And we're specifically looking at not necessarily the population data, but the housing unit data, which is the H1, and that is accessible by clicking on any of these tabs. One of the questions we had was about group quarters. So you can actually access the group quarters data for any of these geographies at this site. This is the actual census data, the redistricting data that we have available here. And I'm not going to go and access our website at this moment because I think that, as I mentioned, you have the link already and you can do that. So I think I'm pretty much done unless there are any questions. Let me check to see if there are any. And we have no questions, so I will hand it off to Tina for the next presentation.
Thank you. So we do have your geography files available on our website. The page Krishna just showed under the Census 2020 stuff at the very bottom, there was, you can see shape files and geodatabases were available for all of the geographies all together. If you just want to download all of them at one time. We also, if you go to our Maps and GIS tab on our website, you will find a link for the Census 2020 geographies as well. And when you go to this page, the tiger shape files that the census puts out are available here at different geography levels. So you can see here what we have available. The Zitter files are not out yet, so as soon as we receive those will become available on this page as well. We also have some PDF boundary maps if you just want to look at maps of the census tracts or the block groups. These files are shape files for GIS, so you can use them in ArcMap or ArcPro. You can also pull them into the GUP software that the census provides, or just basic quantum GIS, which is just the free GIS software that you can download. So the census also provides all the geographic data. So these are the links if you access our PowerPoint after the presentation. These are the links where you will find the tiger files at the census website. They also have an interactive map, which you can go into and you can choose different geographies and zoom in and look at, and you can also download data from the interactive map. And then the census also has files on their address count. I'm not sure, Al, did you want to talk a little bit about that?
So this last link provides information at the block geography level. The Census Bureau tabulates how many housing unit addresses are there in that block. So it will say like there are 50 housing unit addresses here in this block. And that could be used to compare against what you might think is the right number, or is a way to verify, hey, these address count lists matches with the number of addresses we think are in this geography. If that doesn't, then that's a good thing to consider whether you would want to pursue a CQR to get that rectified.
So we also wanted to provide some local examples of what you might be looking for. This is not a real error. This is just a made up example looking at Middletown in Frederick County. So the blue area shows what the original town boundaries were. They did have an annexation relatively recently, so the red shows the new annexed areas. So for example, if you went to the census data only showed the previous boundaries, and you know that there was an annexation that perhaps if they didn't get or something went wrong, then that's an area that you might want to address. We are looking at boundaries as of January 2020, so anything after that is not something that the census will be looking at. If it's a very small error, like a single block, you can just provide the census with a list of addresses. If it's a much larger area, you might want to provide a list of block IDs that are part of the new boundary. So if there is, in the cases of annexation, you may need to provide the census with your case documentation. And if there's no annexation, then you just have to provide them with an explanation of how the boundaries need to be corrected. So in the cases of housing errors, again, we're just looking at a section of Frederick County. In the first picture on the left, we were looking at our SDAT records of residential units. And we showed more housing units than what the Census 2020 data provided. So we don't know how an error occurred there or where the error occurred, but clearly there's a discrepancy between the number of housing units that the census counted and the number that we showed in our records. So that is an example of an error you might want to address with this program. In the second slide is an example of where we had housing units that you can see from the aerial photograph is new construction. So this kind of, if you see this kind of discrepancy and you know that these housing units are new or not yet constructed, that would be something that's not included in this program. It would only be housing units that are built as of January 2020. So basically you just want to look and see if there's mainly if there's an undercount in the Census 2020 number of housing units or the location of the units. Great. And I'm just going to pass it over to Al, who's going to go into a little more detail on how you can use the data that we provide.
All right, thank you, Tina. And before I go into this part, I would like to go back to the previous slide, just for a moment, if I can go back. Let's see. Okay, so what we're trying to do is like when Tina was saying that like we looked at our internal records, what we did was we looked at the Department of Taxation and Assessments data, and we overlaid that data with the census block geography and counted the number of tax IDs we have for housing units. So this block is basically, it looks like a lot of townhomes on the left, and then we summarized them and compared against the housing unit count for the Census Bureau. They are off by a little, and then it's up to the jurisdiction to figure out, hey, the information at the block level matches with what we have. If it is, it varies by a little bit, they need to make a determination whether it's worth pursuing a CQR with all the information that needs to be submitted along with that to correct like a couple of housing units, where if it's significant housing units, then that might be a good idea. So with that said, here are some of the things that might help you with identifying housing unit errors. Like you could, like I mentioned, use the tax data or the assessments data. And also you could use your municipal utilities distribution file that would list all the addresses that you have within your jurisdiction, and those probably that have residential use, and count how many units there are and compare them against the housing unit counts that the Census Bureau came up for your jurisdiction. And Krishna pointed out where the data for housing units is located on our website, and you might use that as a guide to compare against what you have in your records to see if that matches or makes sense. And you can also use third-party data sources like Data Axle or Experian from 2010 to 2020 to see how many addresses are there and if they match with what the Census Bureau has. So, and I'm sure like so most of the participants here have participated in the LUCA program, which is a local update of census addresses, where you were providing a list of addresses, housing unit residential addresses to the Census Bureau. And that could be a good starting point to say, hey, this is the local LUCA address list we supply to the Census Bureau. How does that compare with the Census Bureau's counts of the housing units for our geography? And here at the state data center, what we can provide the locals or the jurisdictions that are interested in participating in CQR is the MD property view, with which our property unit mapping units section produces for all the jurisdictions in Maryland. We provided a link where you can download the files and compare this information against what the Census Bureau has. That could be a good starting point as well for the count review. And again, like the group quarters is a separate initiative. What Matt mentioned, it might be starting later on, but what we can do with regards to the group quarters is, at least to CQR, you can challenge the location of the group quarters. If they're not located in the right block, you can get them corrected. So you are tabulating your group quarters at the right location. We found a couple of errors with in the prison facilities, which we are looking at as a part of the redistricting requirement, where the state has to readjust the population for the prison population. And we are going to work with the local jurisdictions and see if they are going to file a CQR challenge to get that rectified. And if they are not interested, we will ask them if we can file it on their behalf. And here is what we can provide for group quarters locations. We have a list of all the group quarters in Maryland, which we would be happy to share. And that might not be comprehensive, but like you might have something that's more comprehensive. And if you have the location of all the group quarters, you need to tabulate how many group quarters are by the block and compare them against what the Census Bureau released in the P5 table. And if there are any issues with that, that's worth considering a challenge. And we also have population data, but ours probably would not be accurate as what you might have locally. But like consider tabulating, gathering population information, be it by using the number of occupied beds and assisted living facilities, or other avenues like dormitories, or how many students are located in these dormitories. So again, like before we start considering the GQ challenges, gather all the associated data that you would need before you consider a challenge or go down that pathway. So here's what we think might be the final outcomes. Consider CQR as a due diligence exercise. If you find slight tiny discrepancies, I don't know if it's worthwhile going through the trouble of submitting this challenge, because like I was reminded, a jurisdiction can file a challenge, be it small or large, but you have to wait till the outcome has been submitted by the Census Bureau. They provide a resolution for that. Be it if they accept it or not, before you can consider filing another CQR challenge. Like if you find another discrepancy, you cannot file that CQR challenge till the first one you submitted has been resolved. So gather all the cases together, excuse me, for your geography, and then submit one challenge for your jurisdiction. And most likely that boundary cases will likely prevail, because like in the boundary adjustments, they are going to distribute the population from one geography to the other. There are no net additions of the population. In case of housing unit and counts that have been missed, it might be a little challenging, because like you have to prove that these housing units do exist, either with tax records or utility bills or something tangible that they can verify and say, okay, we missed this. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is, like, if people that live in these housing units did not submit their census forms, there's nothing that could be done. Like if they are housing units that were not counted, the Census Bureau will take that into consideration. So that's that. And finally, we are here to help you with any challenges that you might consider. We are going to be providing training right now, and we will make all the materials available that would help you with your CQR challenges. We will provide technical assistance. If you are considering a CQR challenge, we will more than happy to be we will be more than happy to meet with you to provide any technical assistance you might need for your geography or your jurisdiction CQR challenge. And we are going to be providing resources through the SDC website, property view, and other resources we might have to help you with your CQR challenges. So that's that. With that, we have a final poll question here, which you would like to take before we go into the questions part of the presentation. So we are waiting for responses. So the poll question is your jurisdiction likely to submit a CQR challenge? And we are waiting to gather these responses before we inform people. Few more seconds. Okay, we have the results. About 1/4 of the folks attending the conference are considering a CQR challenge. 3/4 are not. So that's good to know. So at least we have a few people that are going to do a CQR challenge. And just so you know, we are here to help you in any data needs possible. And that's it. Here's our contact information for Krishna, Tina, and myself. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us or need any additional information. With that, we will open up for questions and see if we have any questions we have received so far and answer them as we receive them. Okay, this is just more like a statement we received about if the jurisdiction did not know how to, do not know if they're going to submit a CQR challenge or not. Yes. So I will wait for a couple of moments to see if there are any questions that come up. All right, I haven't seen any questions in the question box yet. So most likely, like what I'm going to stress is like, if any jurisdiction is considering a CQR challenge, please reach out to us. We will try to help you with any data needs that you might have and help you along the way.
We do have a question. Does the group quarters location data that SDC has include group quarter unit counts?
So let me answer that. So we do have GQ locations, but like the unit count information is something that we are not really sure if it's accurate. That needs to be verified locally by the local jurisdictions to make sure that that sounds right. What we can do is provide resources, like if it's a dormitory, we have to get you in touch with the university to make sure that the GQ information, the number of students listed there is accurate. But if it's a house assisted living facility, we can point to the resources where the Department of Health posts that information. If you are not able to get that, we can get that for you for a particular case to get you that information about how many people are in that GQ.
When will Zitter and MSA boundary shapefiles be available on the SDC website?
That's a good question. The Census Bureau is still finalizing the Zitter boundaries and the metropolitan statistical area boundaries. They will be available later this year. I don't have a date yet. I was talking with somebody from the geography section at the Census Bureau last week, and I specifically asked this question, and they have apparently done their internal review of the boundary files, and once it has been approved internally, they will share them. I'm thinking in the next couple of months or so, this would be available.
Will the Census Bureau portion of the presentation be shared?
That's our intent. Once we get that presentation from Matt, we will share. We will actually post the presentation on our website and send all the participants a link from where you can access the presentation.
And I believe that was the last question.
All right, thank you, Krishna and Tina. This concludes our CQR workshop. Before I end, I would like to offer a big thank you to Secretary McCord for his opening remarks, Matt Freites for his wonderful presentation on CQR, Krishna and Tina for their part of the presentation, and Krishna for moderating and coordinating the workshop, and finally John Coleman for running the webinar in the background and making it successful. So the complete recording of this webinar will be available on our State Data Center website, and we will also post the presentations on our website as well. With that said, thank you and have a great day.